Welcome everybody to the Sosa podcast, and my guest today is Alex Gouyet, the founder of Envision Breathwork, a top leader here in this Austin community. Welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Awesome, brother. So, walk us through a little grounding breathwork to start off.
All right. And if you're listening to this podcast at home, feel free to find a nice seat with a straight spine. See if you can expand that spine maybe 1 or 2 inches higher. There's always extra space in the lower back. And we're just going to do one grounding breathwork technique to allow ourselves to just be here. And this is called the physiological sigh. This is the fastest way to release anxiety and get back to a state of focus. And so the way this works is very simple. We're just going to do it for 90 seconds. It's a double inhale through the nose like this. And then a single exhale, sighing out through the mouth. That extended sigh. And so that first breath is filling up 90% of the way, and then an extra little 10%. There's a lot of science behind this. And then you exhale. And we're just going to do it for 90 seconds. In 3, in 2, in 1. Begin. Breath in. Let it go. Again. In. Let it go. Again. In. Let it go. That's it. Double inhales. In. Single exhale. Keep going. Deepest breaths in. Letting it go. Feel the temperature change. In. Let it go. Give yourself permission to let it go. Last 15 seconds. Give it all you got. Final one. Breath in. And let it go. Eyes closed. Awareness inwards. Breath returns to normal. And take a moment to feel your body. Drop the mask. And over the course of these next 30 seconds or so, no rush, allowing yourself to come back to your surroundings. Notice if the world is coming at you a little slower on your own terms.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you. For those who are listening or watching, I hope you did the practice with us. My podcast has been about becoming your best spiritual journeys, and my personal story is a lot about the psychedelic integration journey. But a lot of people are very afraid to play with their mind that way or to test their mind with psychedelics. Tell me about why breathwork is so foundational and applicable for most people. Again, so how is breathwork so user-friendly, so introductory-friendly for most people and foundational throughout history, right? Breathwork's just been with us for a while.
So it's funny you mentioned history. Let's take a moment just to orient ourselves. So, right now this is 2024, and breathwork has really just skyrocketed in really the past 2 years. I mean, Wim Hof started leading workshops in 2013 or so, but didn't really grow popular until COVID. And so I want to acknowledge that there's been a big growth in breathwork thanks to COVID. And what I mean by this is, first of all, there was basically an assault on our breathing, right? This was a respiratory illness, right? People had trouble breathing. We were told to wear masks and stay indoors. And so I'm pretty sure this contributed to people just becoming more aware of this breath, right? We breathe, something like 20,000 times per day. It's crazy. And the very interesting thing that happened during COVID is the U.S. government has actually put hundreds of millions of dollars towards researching how breath work is impacting our brain and body. And so there's been this whole body of studies that have come out in the past year or so, because they started during COVID, that are proving that breath work is the fastest way to release anxiety, to improve your immune system. All these things that are measuring off the charts astronomically better in terms of their effectiveness than modern day pills and supplements. And so your question about, why are we hearing about breathwork? Why is there so much buzz? Why is it so great? It's because breathwork is really the only thing that you have control over. I think a lot of this world is very stressed right now, and they most likely feel out of control. Like there's just 10 deadlines that they're already behind on. They've all these projects, and this is the most important time to learn to control your breath. There's kind of some stoic elements to this, right? You can't control your external environment, but you can still control yourself. But I think we're realizing it's one step further. We can't even control ourselves right now, right? A lot of us, and I have my own journey with this of being addicted to things like food, right? And social media. Sometimes we don't even feel in control of ourselves. And so you go one step further and you realize the breath is actually the only thing we can control. If I ask you, Antonio, to, take a breath in consciously, 1, 2, 3, and let it go, 2, 3. You just took conscious control over something, right? And now it's back to being automatic. And what you might have realized, is you have this extra little bit of control now. And this is the starting point for so many people's journeys. It might lead to plant medicine down the road, but just having this slight bit of leverage over your personal experience always starts with the breath.
It's something that they don't teach you in schools. Something so foundational as your breath. When shit hits the fan and there's a big emergency, look to your breath. Or if you're afraid of something, if maybe you're a little kid and you hear a noise around the corner and your heart starts jumping, the breath is how you calm yourself down. So many different things are required to self-regulate with your breath. People can just combust with their breath, that they can get panic attacks and hyperventilate. And I think this is just so foundational to build yourself up, because you can go through life so much more at a restful state, so much more at a abundant state, by just being able to put yourself at ease with the breath. And it feels really good. I find myself at work, I sell cars for a living, that when I pick up the phone, I realize that my nose gets blocked off. And once at Garen's event, you saw me with the nose strip. So I have constricted nasal, whatever it is, deviated septum, who knows really what I have. So can't really breathe through my nose as much. I should have wore it right now because I'm feeling it. So what I'm getting at is, I clench my breath and I clench my body when I'm on the phone and I'm excited for this sale or something, that I know that it's producing more cortisol, maybe just more stress hormones in my body, unintentionally. It's not like I'm in a state of fight or flight. So what's the effect of stress over time? And how can the breath mitigate that?
So I'm going to take this from a slightly different perspective, which I think is the right way to do it. Let's think about what it means to be healthy. Health, it's not being energized necessarily, right? Because you want to be energized in the morning, but not necessarily at night. And what we realize is health is being able to choose how you feel in any given moment. And This means, for example, we say stress, right? And a lot of people think it's a bad thing. What they're really referring to is chronic stress. Stress becomes unhealthy for our nervous system when it it prevents you from falling asleep at night. If you have a stressor throughout the day where you're working out, right, or you're doing breath work, or you're running, or there's a lion chasing after you and it lasts less than an hour, that actually has so many benefits for your immune system, right, for your lymphatic system, for your cardiovascular system. There's so many studies now coming out that movement and stress in these short bursts is so great for longevity. And so the problem in this dialogue has to just get a little more nuanced in the pop psychology world. Is chronic stress is bad, and then it's called eustress, or very short durations of stress are actually very good for us. And so the problem is most of us work in jobs where there's a lot of psychological stress, right? The stress stays with you when you leave work. You're thinking about it when your head hits the pillow at night, and you never get to activate what's called your parasympathetic branch of your nervous system. You have two branches. One is the sympathetic, basically energy, fight or flight. The other is parasympathetic, rest and digest, also called feed and breed. They're both, it's important to note, they're both active at the same time, but it's kind of like a seesaw. So one's more active than the other. And what we're starting to become aware of is, like you were saying, they should teach it in class. No one's ever taught us how to relax. No one's ever taught us how to be calm. We've been taught by our parents, by social media, how to work really hard, but we haven't been taught or showed this other side of what it means to be a human, which is simply to rest. And this is one of the most potent and applicable forms of breath work today. It's what I teach, a lot of corporate executives at Google, at Yelp, even performance athletes. It's how to just be calm, because it's one of the hardest things to do. It's such a foreign experience.
Which will transform your life if you don't have this kind of practice. And it will prevent burnout. So that way people learn how to recover and rest. On a different layer, do you have experience, and I think you do, I've seen it on your ads, breathwork for transformation, breathwork for healing. Tell me about that.
Well, this word healing can mean a lot of different things in our world today. And I like to tell people at my events, my perspective is we live in a world where we're very polite all the time. And that means in the moment, when there's a negative altercation going on, we hold ourselves back from expressing our truth. Also, we hold ourselves back from even feeling what's going on in our bodies, right? And dissociation is not always a bad thing, right? It can help you be clear. But if you're doing it all the time and you're pushing down these things, maybe it happens once or twice with a boss, a coworker, a family member, a romantic partner. You kind of brush it off the first few times, but then it starts to happen week after week, and it becomes part of your mood. And then this, negative circumstance becomes part of your personality after a year, because it keeps happening, and we're walking around with all this this tension inside us, this pressure, right? Our nervous system has been constantly in this fight or flight experience, because it's holding these things in, and that's what pressure is, right? And when we talk about transformation and healing, it's almost always the mind getting out of the way and allowing the body to heal itself. The mind just has to take a step back, allow the body to have space to do the work it needs. And every time I've done it, this breath work I teach, it's not like crazy hard. It's just breathe in, breathe out, right? And we do that, and people say it's life-changing, and it's because I think it's so simple that there's really no reason to have the mind so active.
Wow, I love that. Isn't it wild? There's such a big self-help culture, biohacks, all these kind of things. A lot of like cerebral left brain productivity hacks, when the truest is being able to put the mind in the backseat and really fill into the body. I really love that and resonate with that. And I heard depression is like just almost a lid like a mason jar, a lid on your emotions and your energy. And you do that long enough, creates that negative pressure that we feel, that numbness that most men feel because they have, men and boys becoming men. That's a whole topic and theme on this podcast because we're redefining what that means now. Our parents' generation, the Gen Zs and baby boomers, sorry, not Gen Zs, baby boomers, Gen X, I don't know which one it is our parents were, but of course they came from the classic old school, don't cry, don't show emotion. If you're going to be really tough, that means you're the most alpha and you're the most, just the hardest as nails. And that's the opposite. Saw a really sad statistic with what Joe Rogan reposted about the amount of suicides in the military. And that's something you don't hear about too often. Memorial Day just recently passed, and it was just really heartbreaking and sad because I've personally known somebody, and number one, obviously humans are not meant to be killing each other. Number two, war is probably the most horrendous thing that that's hell on earth. And that's a whole topic thread on politics and philosophy, but at the heart level, breath work and many other modalities are so essential to get back into the body and let the emotions out. I used to, and I still might want to create t-shirts saying, I love emotions, or emotions are awesome, or just embracing the whole range of emotions. Because a lot of times if you're around someone who's really angry or sad, it makes you feel uncomfortable. A lot of times, if you haven't developed yourself to be able to hold space for those emotions. And, we caught up again at Garen's workshop, which I absolutely love, because it's all about expression. It's all about letting out what's inside each and every single person, which is the human experience. It's not meant to be bottled up and jarred up. And that kind of breath work where you're saying is so simple. It's just breathing in, breathing out. But what does it do and what can it do? You were saying that it moves the mind out and lets the body out. But that's called somatics, right? That's called, Tell me about what people are holding in their body.
Yeah. And, if you, let's say you have a beer keg or some sort of pressure cooker, you have no idea how much pressure is in there until you open it a tiny amount. And then it could be, a fire hydrant's worth of years of things that you've just been pushing down. And that's mostly what people report having come up. And, it can be, I don't know if people on this podcast have seen the videos of, the sexy cathartic releases where the person is crying and, they're yelling at the same time and they're sweating, right? So if that happens, amazing. But also, I had a software engineer recently, first time doing breath work, came to my most intense class. Okay. I warned him beforehand. And at the end, he just said, I realized just how hard on myself I've been. And it's yeah, it doesn't have to be this huge thing. Although, I think with men, we struggle, and some of us have struggled our whole lives to express these things. But we've never been given this opportunity, this education to feel. And somatic breath work, you're asking about somatic breath work. So the word somatic means of the body. And one of the things I hear Stephen Jivers and Fish Fisher, the creators of somatic breathwork, I hear them repeat over and over again, somatic breathwork is not here to make you feel good. It's here to make you feel. That's it. There's, and you talked about the whole range of emotions that you want to feel. And I recently read that the yoga originally started as just sitting postures, and that was called Raja Yoga, Royal Yoga. And then later on, the asanas, the postures, the movements were incorporated into it. And this was in order to allow the body to get into a shape where it could release tension, where it could, channel is the word that was used, but basically get into these states where you give yourself permission, where your body is able to release. And I think that's what we're starting to see with breath work. Is breath work allows there to be just a little chink in the armor. These things you've been avoiding, the things you've been pushing down that you know are in there that require your awareness. Breath work is the first chink in the armor to have this actually become conscious and visible. And that's, I think, what we are awakening to as a society right now.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And it takes effort, and it takes some investment of your time and sometimes resources, which is such a good filter. Because if you want change in your life, you do have to pay a little bit of a price. You have to get out of your couch. If you want that kind of change that we're talking about, even as subtle as being nicer to yourself, how profound does that sound? But have you took inventory of your thoughts? Are you even aware of how you treat yourself? That's how profound it could be. I think self-talk is so vital because you're living with that voice in your head every day, all day. The price of paying for a session, breathwork usually isn't too expensive. It can be free off the YouTube videos. You're just paying for that person's time. You're paying for their expertise, which that has like a pretty increasing ladder. There's some celebrity breathworkers now that Aubrey Marcus works with, or like Jake Paul or something, right? So, yeah, that's how you know that this is really coming up some more. Lucas Mack, I think, is his name?
Yeah, Awaken.
Okay. I highly recommend to reach out locally, even some YouTubers. I'm not familiar with YouTube channels. I know you have one.
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of resources on your channel. But how does someone get started with breath work?
It's funny because I just had a conversation with Max Gomez, who's the founder of Breathwork. So Breath, WRK. It's the fastest growing breathwork app on the App Store. They just announced a partnership with TikTok.
I'm going to download that.
Yeah. And he's the CEO, but he also, is designing the product. And basically you open the app and it automatically has a 1-minute breath work ready for you to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the great thing about breath work is you can get started right now, right? If you're listening to this podcast, you can do the physiological side. It's not like you need any pills, any props, any supplements. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to go to this, mountain in the Himalayas to feel good at your desk right now.
Although that would be a really cool story.
Yeah.
If you did go there.
Yeah, it would be a sacrifice, right? All you need in terms of sacrifice for breath work is just a few minutes. And that's the best way to get started is, whether it's one of my videos. I have a bunch of videos that are usually 10 minutes in length to release stress, to focus, to improve your communication skills, because the breath is so vital to communication, or tapping into our diaphragm. It's I think that's why we're seeing it rise so quickly is, I just led a breath work for 300 people in 6 different continents, and it's for the sales organizations of a big company headquartered here in Austin. And it's like that team, they've never met in person. They're completely remote. They've never had a chance to truly connect. And although it sounds cheesy, they, did report feeling more, in sync with their coworkers. And take that however you want, but feeling, a sense of camaraderie. And the cool thing with breathwork is, at the exact same moment, someone could be on the other side of the world, but you're breathing in the same way. You're feeling the same things. That's powerful. That's a strong feeling of unity.
Love that. And community is the new currency, as Karen says. I love that. I'm curious more about your awakening journey, how you even got to this point. Call it getting out of the matrix. How did you wake up?
Getting out of someone else's matrix and into mine. That's I think how I would say it. So I have always been a thoughtful, often quiet and curious person. That's something that just growing up, I was the youngest of three boys, youngest by a few years to my older brothers. And I was always just like kind of doing my own thing. I was very good with computers from an early age, but I was also reading a lot. And I've also been just like on a physical level, athletically gifted, played soccer.
Oh, cool. Me too.
Yeah. Okay. Very nice. What position?
Midfield.
Midfield. I was center mid.
Nice. Gotta play.
Yeah, I gotta play. I've always been, I guess, learning. I think that's my big thing. And what really started it, we talked about suicide, is so I grew up in Palo Alto, California. Very, very competitive school. So much so that the CDC actually has been studying Palo Alto High School and Gun High School because of the absurdly high amount of suicide rates of high schoolers there. And so I've lost a few friends and a few friends to suicide, and it forces you to stop, right, and look at the way you're living your life, and it kind of brings higher order conceptual thinking into it. Like, what are we doing here? And around that time, when I was a junior in high school, a couple of things happened. One is my mom invited this gentleman, Surfer Mike, who posted on Nextdoor in the Palo Alto community chat. He was offering free yoga classes, and basically for a few Fridays in I guess 2015 or 2016, he would come over and teach us yoga.
Surfer Mike.
He looks exactly like he's and just the greatest guy. The energy you'd expect from a name like that. And I was also just very depressed during this time. Although I didn't know it at the time, I was very dissociated from my emotions. And it's actually a condition that I now realize I had called depersonalization, where you do not feel like you're in your body, living your life. And I don't know how many people are experiencing that, but it is a process, not just an event, to work through that, and it requires consciously inviting in your emotions. And so this awakening journey really, really started there. Maybe when
I have to ask more about that high school, because that's Silicon Valley, right? Palo Alto, Silicon Valley. So you're working with the quote unquote smartest people's kids.
Yes.
That's your high school, right?
Yes.
Which, I'm connecting some dots. Maybe that's why. Tell me more about how it was growing up in that kind of environment. I'm really keen on figuring that out.
Let's unpack that. So I think regardless of the culture, my parents did an amazing job raising me, and my brothers. They weren't ever, incredibly harsh and demanding on us. But at the schools, there definitely was a culture of, are you gonna solve cancer this next year? Right? Like, what are you doing on summer break? I'd go for a walk, and Mark Zuckerberg, is running by.
No way.
All these, the people who are movers and shakers of the entire world are in this ecosystem. And one of my friends said, the religion of Palo Alto, it's not Christianity or Buddhism or something. It's school, right? It's education.
Really?
And so you see just the school as the pinnacle of what Palo Alto is aiming for, and it just was not. I think I did pretty well, but I know a lot of friends who just, it wrecked them, the pressure, and
because it was very competitive.
Yeah,
sure.
Gun High School is more competitive, and do you know Andrew Huberman? So he went to Gun High School, and this is something he's talked about on his podcast on the suicide rates there. And his high school, like, not to it's a little friendly competition, but his high school, Gun High School, is across the street from a cemetery, and that's already pretty chilling. And then Pally, my high school, at lunch we got to go across the street to the Town and Country shopping mall. We got to go off campus, and so we definitely had a higher quality of just socializing compared to gun, which is definitely the more academically rigorous. But yes, there is this ethos to Palo Alto, and you see it at Stanford too. Of let's change the world, right? Whereas MIT, Harvard, it's let's do a very good job, and maybe more academically centered. Whereas Stanford has the startups, and so yes, there's a lot of energy and high standards for what our dreams were.
Wow. So Palo Alto, I'm imagining it's like one of the top high schools, just the smartest people, smartest kids, which can really shape you. The way I grew up was moved around a bit, but went to a school up north here in Georgetown. And luckily I made some pretty good friends that were smart, came from good families. Their parents worked for IBM. And it was great to be part of that association because their vocabulary, their dedication to just the academics was elevating me, because years beforehand I had just not the best friend group at all. And they say you become who you associate with. And after high school, after college, people tend to just default to their coworkers. People tend to just default to their childhood friends. Nothing wrong with old friends. I still have plenty of them. But cultivating that friend group that is really resonant to yourself takes work. First, you have to know yourself, know what you like, what's really authentic to you, so where you're not wearing a mask in front of people, and then finding the others who are of the same feather. Tell me more about the friends that you might have made, maybe have kept, and the ones that you maybe have now.
So, you hear about, you moved away for college, but there's still the friend who just stayed in your hometown.
Yes,
right? It's
yes.
like a stereotype. Well, with growing up in Palo Alto, it's kind of the opposite. Like, you want to stay in Palo Alto, right? Like, that's where the most successful people went, is literally across the street from our high school is the Stanford campus. And with that, honestly, I did not have very close friends in high school. I think I'm part of, and I think we're just seeing this more. I spent a lot of time just, on YouTube, at home, except for, I had my soccer tribe, but I wasn't like super great friends with them. I wouldn't hang out with them, during school hours.
Mm-hmm.
What happened in senior year is I discovered a love for drones. Kind of just happened. This is like a crazy story, and it makes you think about genetics, where I'd known that my grandfather on my French side, on my dad's side, he was a bricoleur, like a handyman, right? Like could fix anything, known by his entire community for that. And my dad, he's amazing software engineer, but not too much on the hardware side of things. And none of his three boys, none of myself or my brothers had hardware experience, like no real engineering side to us. And there was a day, there's 2 days in January of 2016 where I learned that my favorite high school professor, Mr. Scott, had suddenly passed away of a heart attack.
Dang.
And it took everyone by surprise. Like the most beloved professor, teacher at Pally. It was just such a shock. And it like triggered, I'd already had, you could say it, latent depression that, I didn't know about. But this, the whole next school day, I couldn't look at anyone, and I was just like, I was trying to process it. And that evening, my dad comes home from work, and he has this little box in his hands, and he's like, "Hey, Alex, this is a gift from, one of the companies we just did a business deal with. I don't know what's in it. Feel free to open it." And I open it, and it's this super small drone, with like 4 propellers, very small. And I plug it in, and I have the remote, and I, put the AA batteries in the remote, and I apply some throttle to the joystick, and it takes off, and there was like this moment of, whoa, like this light switch just like flipped on. I was like, this is like the coolest thing. This is like indistinguishable from magic. And over the course of that semester, my final semester of, high school, where, academics were finally done, I'd already gotten into McGill University. I had all this time, this free time, that went towards this new passion of drones. So it started by me buying, a slightly bigger drone and a slightly bigger drone, and these ones came from China, and, it took a month, and I'd be checking every day. And then after a month or two, I learned through YouTube how to hack into them, how to modify them. I ended up, we were talking about create, like you being the one to create things and lead the way. I published these videos on YouTube, these tutorials of how to basically hack a popular consumer drone to add a feature to it. And it racked up over like 150,000 views or something. And it was like, whoa, like there's something here. I'm doing stuff that's really cool. And then I eventually, built my own drone and brought that with me on my travels during my gap year. And it led to me joining the drones team at McGill University. And so that kind of became my passion. It was such a passion for me in my senior year of high school. And it also opened me up to what was called, it was one of the first maker spaces. You might have heard this term. It's where there's 3D printing like there's a 3D printer on site. It's usually a building near a college campus or something. So there's a maker space in a couple of them in Palo Alto, and it's called MakeX, and it was the first student-led maker space in the country. And I went there every day after school, biked there, and just built my drone and flew drones with other people. And, some people working on robotics projects. And that was such a highlight. It gave me light for the first time in a really long time.
Wow. And it's so interesting, giving you light. It's whatever man and machine, right? Man and nature, or just man and a spirited man with whatever they are really passionate about. Everybody loves to hear about what moves somebody. And I can feel that from you. And I have not as much love for drones as you do, but I have a DJI for cameras, and it's fun. It's just so fun to play around, and you see maybe the same thrill with a boy and like those monster trucks or those things that they control. But man and machine is something that's fascinating, and the future of drones and currently how they're being used at the war in Ukraine. I don't know if you know of a YouTuber named Johnny Harris.
Yes.
He did a whole video on how this university, these guys are essentially freedom fighters, just making drones in mass to use them as
drone warfare.
Yeah, the present and the future is going to be even more wild, kind of like Terminator.
Yeah, I want to touch on like man and machine. The concept of really diving into the thing that makes you curious is such a, I guess, an antidote for a lot of suffering. I mean,
Yes.
that's one thing one of my people I respect most is Jordan Peterson, just because he's so potent with the way he speaks. And he says, look at the things that attract your attention, right? And go into them. There's a reason. There's, in this moment right now, there's a million things that can attract your attention, right? The quality of the clothes you're wearing, right? How you're, sitting and breathing. It's so unlikely that one thing should grasp your attention. And so if it does, read that as, basically from the divine and, go into it. And if I've recently learned about the history of work in, like from an anthropological level, and even before the first agricultural societies, there are elaborate hand-carved knives. This, it's a fundamental aspect of human nature to want to improve and better ourselves and create these works of art, or just technological mastery. It's something deep inside us. And I think every man should have some, side project or passion that he delights in the doing of. Because with the drones, it really wasn't about flying. It was about building them. And I got that from a lot of my friends, especially on the drones team. Like, we just build drones and then take them apart and then build them. There's something so satisfying about, these passions that we find within ourselves.
Wow, love that. And you said that poetically. So you said that just brilliantly. And it should speak to everybody listening, because the life unexamined, the life just not being lived the way you want to, is just not worth living, as much as the life of your passions and your interests and really pursuing and exploring them. A lot of times people are just in fight or flight. I have to make money. I have to do this. I have to do this. And of course, we're in blessed positions, but we've created the conditions to be in these blessed positions. And if you're listening to this, you can start taking actions to live the life that you want to live, and find the craft that you want to dedicate yourself to. I'm in a stage right now where I have so many interests and and I'm going to explore a lot of them. But I am realizing that I do want to start narrowing them down, and I have some that are narrowed down because, I did spend the last 10 years maybe mastering selling in certain other areas, but I want the next 10 to 20 years to be a little bit more about art, a little bit more about crafting and building something, because it will really only take 10,000 hours for you to become really great at it. But if you're approaching whatever craft you want to dedicate yourself with lots of humility and that student mentality that you're gonna suck for a while till you get good, then you're just gonna have fun with the process. I went to the Bullock Museum with my brother. Have you been?
I actually went to the IMAX theater, which is, I think, inside the Bullock.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next time you go, there's a really great, and we didn't even finish it. We took some psychedelics and we went in there and blown away by these fine instruments. Essentially, it's a story of a shipwreck somewhere in the Gulf or something. And they have the entire ship and its treasures inside it. Beautiful things. A compass. You would be surprised too, like the tools that they use, like these things that we have here is kind of just big and bulky, like plastic. But the metal and the fine craftsmanship that they used back then is really small. It's like if they were small people, maybe. But it's just fine-tuned instruments. When you mentioned the handcrafted knives, I'm like, ooh, I really want to see it. It's probably not going to be huge unless you're a Viking. But I do appreciate that kind of art, and I want to make that kind of art. Whether it be woodworking, blowing glass, painting, music, dedicating yourself to your creative expression can be very therapeutic as well. And it just really makes life worth living, because that is the point of life, if you're wondering. It's just enjoy it and to be the fullest version of you. Is that what we're doing? What do you resonate with that, with how our crafts and hobbies just really bring out a different side of us? What are you interested in right now? Do you still play with drones? Do you still build?
Good question. I will never profess to know what exactly is going on here. I do think that your ability to be comfortable in the present moment is determining everything about your reality. And I'm still uncovering different layers to that.
Say that again. Your ability to be
present. Your ability to be comfortable in the present moment determines everything about your reality. And, yes, we are, creatures that can plan for the future. The problem that we're now running into is, the future is looking a little scary. Scary not in necessarily a bad term. Maybe the word is terrific, right? Where it could go really well or really wrong, which, kind of like a suspenseful magic show or an opera, right? Or a movie. I love the word terrific because it encapsulates the human experience, right? And, things can go wrong, right? As we transition into a new era of work, where it's less about even your thinking power, right? That was the big revolution that happened in the past century, is intellectual capital, and now ChatGPT and AI is replacing that. And so what's next? And so all that to say, there's such a vagueness to economically what's going to happen, that the only way to really find security and feel secure in this moment is just to be here. And it's the hardest thing. It's the simplest thing, but it's also the hardest thing. And yeah, I think that's what comes up for me when you ask that. And in terms of what I'm working on now, I'm working through Jordan Peterson's Exodus series. So he had the biblical series in 2017, which was 16 2.5-hour episodes on Genesis. And he recently released this one on Exodus. And instead of him speaking to a crowd, it's him with, I believe, 7 other scholars. And they are debating, they're basically explaining why Exodus might be relevant to today's world. And it's fascinating. There's a lot of stuff. So that's top of mind for me, is Exodus, and then Joe Dispenza meditations, and training my puppy Archie how to sit and stay.
That's many beautiful threads to go into. I want to pin a few of those, but hone in on being present with the moment. That's very underrated, especially if you've ever been in a group setting. Let's just say you're at Six Flags, or you're going on a vacation with a group of friends. I want you to think about that. Whoever's the most in a rush, the one who's the person in the group who's most pressed about time, probably has the most anxiety. Because the way I've learned and really approached group settings or just adventure is, yeah, we might have some structure, but the whole journey is the adventure, and it can look totally different. Have you noticed that? How does the being present with the moment translate to your partner or a group setting where they may not be in the present moment? Any stories or examples that you might have seen?
One thing that comes to mind is the people who I find most successful in this world tend to have very open schedules. Right.
Mm-hmm. I have to say,
Yeah.
double down on that. Success looks like doing less, not more.
Yes. Free time is the new status symbol. And
Oof, that's so good.
yeah. I realize this, and I get into like chapters where this occurs, where I'm driving fast, right? And and I'm rushed. And I think the ultimate question is, how comfortable am I in the unknown? I think it comes back to control versus faith that the unknown will have the best path for you. And this isn't something we were really taught growing up, and it's one of these paradoxes, where should you, we're talking about self-control on this podcast, but we're also talking about trusting the unknown. And I think it's something like you have to take care of yourself, do the proper habits, whatever that looks like, so that you can be prepared for anything. I think that's kind of the requirement for the world that we're entering into, is to be ready to take on additional and uncertain conditions.
And that makes for a great leader.
Yes, and that's what we look for, and that's the kind of the signal of a great leader, is the person who's not just looking at other people, right, figuring out how they should behave. They've learned the rules of this world, of this society. They're acting by the rules, and now they're starting to create the rules, right? And that's how you know who the movers and shakers are. They're not worried about their necessarily how much money they're making. They're worried about the higher level conceptual things of where is this society going to? Where am I? Where do I fit in this society now? How can I be the best version? It's no longer thinking about these base level securities, kind of what you were talking about with fear, and being able to think creatively and being able to connect with others. And I think the reason this is so important is it informs every single interaction you have throughout the day, is your relationship with something, either more spiritual or just more conceptual about this world. It bleeds into every single interaction you have. And this is arguably the point of meditation, is to realize that every single moment has the potential to be a transcendental moment, to be the richest moment of your life. And that's such a scary thought to people, because there's so much power behind it. It means they have this level of control over engaging in this world, and that we're very vulnerable as humans. And so it's recognizing that every moment has the potential to be transcendental, and that's okay. And that's a great thing.
A lot there, but I want to tie back to your awakening story.
Yes.
This was all just a tangent. Now, you brought up Palo Alto to the high school, and this is really amazing to hear your story. But did you really start waking up in college? You were reading and you were curious, which are essential ingredients. You have to be essential ingredients to really thinking for yourself, peeling the layers that just are not you and imposed to your own society. Were there any milestones or like major breakthroughs?
Well, I know that my litmus test for knowing how, I don't know what the word is, trusting in the moment, maybe growth. The litmus test is how much I journal that day.
Really?
And I think we're seeing almost it's a silent attack on this idea of linear thought, because everything we watch now is, stimulating from the very first second, and it jumps all over the place. And it's so, even with text messages now, we don't write in complete sentences. And, we're usually juggling 3 different things. And I think awakening, I'm fine with the word as long as we say it's a process, not an event, and it has to have a line, right? There's a direction to it, and that's what I think journaling shows me, is that I'm on at least one direction and not just all over the place in my energies. And so in terms of milestones, graduated from high school, and I was the youngest of 3 boys. I had the instinct, the desire to take a gap year. One of my friends who was a year older than me had done it, and he was on it, and he was, I think, in New Zealand or something, woofing, which is organization that pairs you with organic farms.
Wow.
And I said, okay, let's do this. And I won't go too much into the year, but very big growth experience for me, because I'd been dabbling in meditation just before starting the gap year. And the first part of my gap year was doing this program, this 3-month travel program with 11 other gap year takers my age, and then 2 leaders, 2 organizers. And there was something new every single day. It was 3 months in China, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand. And
with that group, or?
Yeah, with that group. So very tightly knit, going to the major cities, Beijing, Bangkok, Phnom Penh, but also doing service projects in the countryside, or, going to the Great Wall of China. And I had been meditating maybe every other day during that trip and before. And there were, I had some tendencies to, this is one of the pitfalls of meditation and of religion, is to alienate people who are not part of your creed. And I was, judgmental of anyone who wasn't meditating. I was like, how could you not meditate? And I was also really seeking out the highs of meditation, which, you're not told to do in a lot of these meditations. I was like trying to feel, because once again, I was coming from this place of depersonalization, dissociation. And it all came to a turning point at this monastery in Thailand, where we only stayed for 2 days, but, we sat in silence most of the time. And what I was seeing in the monks, I don't know if I'd see this today, but what I was seeing in the monks is just grayness and, like furthering of the state I was in now, in dissociation. And I ended up at the end of that experience saying, I don't want to meditate again. And so, now with more foresight, I'm realizing I was obviously meditating in a way that wasn't sustainable, seeking out, the sensations, which is kind of the opposite of the experience. And it was a refusal of the call, like in the hero's journey. One of the first steps is the hero refuses the call and refuses it until, the situation gets bad enough. And so that's what I entered university in Montreal with, is this deep sense of fear, insecurity, not wanting to do anything mindful, drink a lot, smoke a lot. I was still part of the drones team. I wasn't like a deadbeat or anything, but for my standards, like I was, just like, not exercising or anything. And that was basically my whole university experience, was like drones and drinking.
Drones and drinking.
And it wasn't until COVID hit that I started to, that's where I discovered breath work, was during COVID.
Really?
And that started a new awakening journey, is allowing myself to feel really great. And it was kind of, now that I'm saying it out loud, there was this element to feeling things again, but it felt more like I was coming at it a second time. And there was this quote that I kept coming back to from Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, which is, live life as if you were living it for the second time and you were about to act as incorrectly as you did the first. And I kept coming back to that. And I think it's still great.
Love that quote. My favorite one from him is, between the stimulus and the response, there's a space in the middle. And in that middle is where your freedom is. The more you meditate, the more you breath work, the more you just know thyself, the bigger that space becomes. And if you're in a relationship, they will piss you off. You're going to need a big space. Your partner will become your biggest mirror and reflector, and, your nervous systems will get intertwined, and cultivating that is huge. I know that you gave an awesome explanation of your journey and your story there. Tell me about the lockdown. Is that where you found breathwork? Was it a YouTube video? And because that set the trajectory of where you are now. And of course, yes, awakening is a process. It's a domino effect. It's never just one thing that happened. And if you don't get that one thing, you're not going to wake up. Everything aids to your growth and your development. But yeah, COVID was a lot of people's 9/11. Like, it just was a huge, something's not right. Tell me more about that.
So when the lockdown actually started, I was supposed to be in Santiago, Chile for an exchange semester. This was my third year, the winter semester. And I spent 17 days in Chile, and then, got recalled, came home on, I think, March 14th or something. And I had been doing breathwork for a month up until that point. Right before I went to Chile, I was at my grandmother's place in Florida, and just, living with her, cooking with her. And I'd started doing triathlons.
Oh, cool.
And was awful at holding my breath underwater. And so, I couldn't get my breathing rate right. And so, I was looking into the solutions out there, like the hypoxia masks, high altitude, mimicking masks, running with a straw in your mouth to have the slowest, the breath possible. And then I, looked up on YouTube, and there's this, it said like Wim Hof breathwork, 11 minutes. And it's, the one that everyone's done most likely. And I do that, and I have this basically like a spiritual experience where I felt like I died, and I was like, whoa, like, what is this? Like, what what just happened? It was crazy. All this stress, this depression that I'd been feeling, it just melted away. And the next day I did this holotropic breath work. And, I had an even deeper experience. And then I go to Chile, and I was very, very angsty in Chile. Like I was not having a good time at all. Just, drinking every day, very emotionally dysregulated, not loving myself, at all. And go back home, basically move in with my parents back in California with no friends to see. My university, was still figuring it out, how to do the online gig. And I basically decided to follow this thread of breathwork. It was the thing that was calling me. It was calling my attention. And so basically every day, for the next year and a half or so before I moved to Austin, I was doing and exploring and mastering different breathwork styles. So the holotropic, the kundalini, the pranayama, the somatic, right? The Wim Hof. I would do these. I would do Tai Chi. I would go in the morning to a park. I would do like 20 minutes of Tai Chi, and then I'd fly my drone, and then I, would just look up at the stars because it was still early. And that was definitely one of the elements of awakening is the breath work. Plus reading Autobiography of a Yogi by Yogananda.
Would you recommend that one?
Yes. It's the book that Steve Jobs read every single year.
Wow.
Until he died.
Didn't know that. That's so cool.
Yeah. And there's some more there on Jordan Peterson discovering his biblical series and understanding more about myself, what it means to be human, and all the baggage that it can come with. And eventually I moved to Austin in 2021, had all this breathwork experience, meaning I knew how to do it. I knew the fundamentals of it. I had never really taught it or shared it. And a gentleman who was leading a self-development community, Derek Lively, he saw it in me before I really saw it in myself. He was like, you could be one of the best facilitators ever. Like the way you just, I led him through a little thing, and he was like, come on, man, like you got to start leading. And he said, you got to start a men's group. You got to start doing breath work. And so I started leading these breath work lessons, workshops. Basically, it was the men's group on Tuesdays where we do 15 minutes of breath work that I'd lead. And then there was a event I started in 2022 called Tai Chi, Breathwork, and Ice Baths. And it was at my place in the backyard, and it was exactly what it sounds like. We do Tai Chi slapping, where we'd slap ourselves, slap the whole body, get nice and warm. Then we do some Wim Hof style breath work, and then we would plunge at the end. And it was just every single week, basically for a year and a half. And that consistency, plus I would say some partnerships with people like Ellie Rome, and my somatic breathwork certification, I think have helped me to become, I don't want to say one of the most prominent, but, a prominent figure in the Austin breathwork community. It's hard to find people who are stable and consistent in this community, just because there's so much movement through Austin right now.
Definitely. And yeah, I definitely would consider you one of the prominent breathwork facilitators here. So I'm really honored that you've been on this podcast. And tell me about what you have going on, what the vision looks like, and where they can find you.
Vision. First time I'll say this on a public interface is my vision is to host the world's first breathwork conference. This is something that's been echoed to me just in my own realizations. People in the community have mentioned it. This gentleman I talked to, the CEO of Breathwork, I was asking him, what's missing, right? There's apps now, there's practitioners. He was like, there's a yoga alliance, International Yoga Alliance. There's not a breathwork one. And I think that's where I see what I see myself growing into. It scares me, but I think that's the next thing I want to get for my next season of the podcast, get the creators of the major breathwork certifications out there. So, somatic, Wim Hof, Kundalini, pranayama on my podcast. So it can be a watering hole for people who are curious about these different styles, because it's a big decision to get certified and there's so many styles out there. So I think that's the most identifiable goal. And also on a values level, to be unapologetically proud of breath work. And you talked about sales experience. That's something I'm working on, is selling breath work, sharing breath work in the most effective, most compelling way. And so like right after this, I'll say it, I'm going to UT Austin and I'm offering free breath work on the spot to students, and we're just going to see what happens. It's something that scares me. Even now it's bringing up nerves, but that's I think the next step in my spiritual and, personal and entrepreneurial journey is to get out there more. Cause this world needs to breathe.
Thank you so much. That sounds so exciting. Whenever you post about it, I'm going to love watching those. I think it's going to be a hit. And I think, especially in Austin, people are going to be open to it.
I hope so.
Yeah. You give them a little snack size and plug them into something later. That's brilliant. That's beautiful. I'm really proud of what you're doing. Thank you so much. For everybody listening that made it this far, thank you for just being with us. And please leave a like and a comment. And I'll see you on the next one.